This episode is brought to you by Dead Man's Wire, the new film from Roquet Entertainment. Dead Man's Wire is the incredible true story of the 1977 kidnapping that turned an aspiring entrepreneur into an outlaw folk hero. Directed by legendary filmmaker Gus Van Sant, Dead Man's Wire stars Bill Skarsgård, Dacre Montgomery, Carrie Elways, and Myha'la, with Coleman Domingo and Al Pacino. Now playing in select theaters everywhere January 16th.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes. I was waiting. Me and Keith were just playing Talk Chicken on the podcast. I won.
That's amazing.
All right. Hey, you, and welcome, everybody. My name is Mike, and you're listening to this whole episode of the That Chapter podcast. You've already heard his dulcet tones. You probably already can hear that your tonight is ringing. Yes, Keith is back on the podcast, joining me for another story. Keith, how you doing, pal?
Good, man. I'm doing very good. I'm excited for this one today.
Yeah, well, this was your topic, I believe, wasn't it, young dirty Keith?
It was, yeah.
Because Keith, as I said, he came in here today, right, with a big shit-eating grin on. He's once again wearing his I am the daughter of the witches you couldn't burn t-shirt. And... and
I'm an ally.
And he's ready to do the podcast, folks.
Ready to go.
Exactly. He's got his stones in his hands.
They're crystal. They're minerals.
Crystals. Sorry, he brought his crystals in his hands, and he's just ready to go, folks. He's just ready to go. Keith, what is it about witches that hypnotizes you so?
They're hot.
Okay, that's fair. Can't blame you for that one, I suppose.
Yeah, man, I can't argue with that one.
However, what's the deal? What's the deal with this? All right, folks. What do you ever think with this? The traditional depiction of a witch is like some ugly old bitch with like warts on her face and a giant crone.
Yes.
An old ugly crone, right? That's what when you think of a witch, historically, that's what you would think of.
Yes, an old hag.
Now, suddenly, in the last 10 years, they've become hot.
Yeah, right.
What's the deal with that?
I don't know, man, but I'm here for it.
You know what the funny thing is? I recently watched Hocus Pocus because it is a great movie. And Sarah Jessica Parker, year one, she's like the hot witch.
Yeah.
But it's also like, she's not really that hot. She's just hot in comparison to the other two.
It's the best she's ever looked, I'd say.
It is the best she's ever looked.
Yeah.
But in fairness now, she's also up there against the fat one and the green one. So it's like, the competition isn't hard.
There's something there. There's a lesson there. Just surround yourself with ugly people.
There you go. And you will look hotter.
Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm. That's why I have you in the pod.
A nice warm life lesson.
Alrighty, folks. Let's get into today's topic.
Okay.
Keith, what are we talking about?
Witches.
Yes, folks, we had a good time on the podcast. We probably had too good a time sometimes, I think. All right, folks. Yep, today we are talking about witches. About 80 years before the infamous witch trials at Salem, one of the most notorious witch trials in English history unfolded in the north of England, in the shadow of Pendle Hill in Lancashire. In the summer of 1612, 12 people from a tiny area around Pendle Hill were accused, Keith?
Of witchcraft.
They were. The charges ranged from cursing little dolls to practicing magic, selling their souls to the devil, and even murder. 10 of them were put on trial. 10 of them were executed. This, folks, it's a fascinating case from an area already dripping in folklore, superstition, and drama. At the heart of it are two feuding, self-proclaimed witching families, and a case that relied heavily on the testimony of a 9-year-old girl against her own mother. And what makes the Pendle case even more unusual is how well it was documented. We have an official account written by Thomas Potts, the clerk of the court during the trials. His book, The Wonderful Discovery of Witches, which sounds a lot more like happy-go-lucky than what actually happened.
It's like the prequel to The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, exactly. It was published not long after the trials in 1613 and became an instant bestseller. So, without further ado, let's give it a go. Our story today takes place in the area around Pendle Hill, near the city of Lancaster in northwest England. Lancaster has a very dark judicial history, earning itself the nickname the Hanging Town because the court at Lancaster Castle sentenced more people to death than any other court in England outside of London. So it ticks all the boxes.
Absolutely. They were mad for it.
Yeah.
They loved it.
I couldn't get enough of it, honestly. Not far from the city rises Pendle Hill. And we say hill, but it's only about 170 feet short of the 2,000 foot requirement to be classed as a mountain. It's a fucking big hill,
it's huge.
folks. It looks like a mountain. It's not like sharp at the top. It's like, what do you call them? It's like a rolling mountain kind of thing.
It looks like completely flat at the top.
Yeah, exactly. It does. Yeah. And if the place ever looked like it was designed specifically for a gathering of witches at a Sabbath, it is Pendle Hill. You can imagine like bonfires being lit on like Halloween night and what's the opposite?
You've seen for miles around.
Exactly. Yeah. What does Halloween October 31st, and then is it like May 31st or April 31st? It's like 6 months from Halloween is there's another Witches' Day.
Oh,
it's like it's sometime in April or May.
I can't
Walpurg something like that. Anyway,
yeah.
St. Walpurgis Night.
Spooky shit, folks. It's all happening there. It is a large, bleak, dominating altar that casts a long shadow over the valley and the forest of Pendle below. The landscape around Pendle is so striking that many people believe it helped inspire parts of Middle-earth. Some say that J.R.R. Tolkien himself took inspiration from this area when he was writing about the dark lands of Mordor and the Lord of the Rings. It is here, around the foot of that hill, that the backdrop of our story is set.
Now, by the year 1612, England, it was a complete pressure cooker. The weather had been brutal for years due to what we now call the Little Ice Age. Summers were cold, winters were vicious, crops failed repeatedly, food shortages were common, and people were starving. When everything in your life is failing and you do not have the science, psychology, or weather forecasting, you start to look for a villain. And in a rural England, that villain was very often your not-so-friendly neighbourhood witch. On top of that, England was tearing itself apart with religious tensions. Catholics and Protestants, they were at it again. Each side believed the other was in league with the devil. Accusations of heresy, treason, and witchcraft all blended into one big paranoid mess.
What a time to be alive.
What a time. And sitting right at the tippity top of all this chaos was King James I. Now, James, he was not just a casual believer in witches. This man, he was locked in. Yeah, you got the book.
I have his book.
You have his book. Solid read. So he was so convinced that witches were real, powerful, and actively trying to destroy him. So much so that he wrote and published his own book, which Mike has there in his hands, on the subject of witches in 1597 called Demonology. Now, this was not a spooky fun read. It was basically a royal instruction manual on how to identify, interrogate, and then execute witches. So James, he genuinely believed that witches had previously tried to assassinate him by summoning storms at sea while he was travelling. So when the king told his country witches are real and they are everywhere, people listened. And if that was not enough paranoia for one nation, along came 1605 and the Gunpowder Plot. Yes, that's the one with your man Guy Fawkes. Basically a group of English Catholics, they attempted to blow up the House of Parliament and assassinate King James and his entire government. Now the plot failed, but the psychological damage was done. The king became even more suspicious, more fearful, and more obsessed with hidden enemies working in the shadows. So this fear of rebellious Catholics brought harsh penalties for anyone keeping the Catholic faith. His suspicious nature, paired with his firm belief in witchcraft, led to the passing of a new Witchcraft Act imposing the death penalty. Quote, for making a convent with an evil spirit, using a corpse for magic, hurting life or limb, procuring love, or injuring cattle by means of charms.
And now, actually, as Keith mentioned, I have the annotated Demonology by King James in front of me. Let me just read out the preface.
Okay.
This is the introduction written by King James in his book from 16 blah blah blah.
Yeah.
To the reader, the fearful abounding at this time in this country of these detestable slaves of the devil, the witches or enchanters, hath moved me, beloved reader, to dispatch in post this following treatise of mine, not in any way, as I protest, to serve for a show of my learning and ingenuity, but only moved of conscience, to press thereby, so far as I can, to resolve the doubting hearts of many, both that such assaults of Satan are most certainly practiced, and that the instruments thereof merits most severely to be punished, against the damnable opinions of two principally in our age, whereof the one called Scott, an Englishman, is not ashamed in public print to deny that there can be such a thing as witchcraft, and so maintains the old error of the Sadducees in denying of spirits. Folks, what the fuck was that even about? I don't know, but
Also, he was Scottish, so do it in a Scottish accent.
Oh, fuck off. Was he actually? I thought that English accent was good.
He was King James V.
People don't want to hear it.
And then he was King James I of England.
folks, nobody wants to hear it. The fearful being at this time in this country of these detestable slaves of the devil, the witches.
That's way more scary.
See, that's why I did it in an English accent. It sounds a bit more,
Posh.
It sounds a bit more kingly.
Kingly, yeah. Now, Lancashire, it was regarded as wild and lawless, partly due to its sympathy with the Catholic Church. So it didn't help when local magistrates, likely looking to find favour with King James, became overzealous in their pursuit of witchcraft. Honestly, you could not design better conditions for a witch panic if you tried. And that is the world the people around Pendle Hill were living in when accusations started flying about.
Flying about like on
witches.
broomstick, perhaps. Yeah. The story of the Pendle Witches begins March 18th, 1612, with a young woman named Alison Device. That day, Alison was walking along a forest road near Pendle Hill when she came upon a man named John Law, a peddler from Halifax, a nearby merchant town. She stopped him and begged for some metal pins. See, metal pins are commonly associated with both folk magic and witchcraft at the time. They were used in charms, spells, and puppets. And Alison, coming from one of the poorest families in the district, she was used to begging. John, however, he refused. He would not give her a single pin. He said, "Not today, sister." Instead, he told her no, and he just continued on his way. He just moseyed on down the road. Now, he likely knew of Alison's grandmother, a well-known cunning woman thought to be a witch in the area, so he wanted fucking nothing to do with Alison or her family. He knew who she was related to. He was like, nope, I'm not even talking to you.
Stay away from that.
This pissed Alison off to no end, and so in her anger, she hurled a curse in the peddler's direction. The curse had barely left her lips when John stumbled and collapsed onto the road. His arms and legs went numb. One side of his face began to droop. He could barely speak. Now, if you're thinking that sounds exactly like a medical emergency, you're absolutely right. But in 1612, Lancashire, this was not a stroke. This was 100% witchcraft. And I mean...
It was struck bad timing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, what are the fucking odds?
Right,
I know, that she says, cast thou down to hell, some kind of curse. Avada Kedavra.
Yeah.
And then, he just collapses. Like, what are the odds?
I suppose, like, if...
she must have been like, fuck, I didn't think that was going to work.
Whoops. But I suppose, like, back then, like, people really believed in witchcraft and curses and stuff. So if you had high blood pressure, if someone cursed you, you go, fuck.
Maybe it scared him so much.
That he get himself struck.
Yeah, it's like belief.
Yes.
Belief overpowered the mind and the
mind
body.
over the body.
Yeah, ooh, very good,
you.
Keith. What an astute point, as usual.
Thank you.
John somehow managed to drag himself to the nearest alehouse because he was like, fuck, I need a drink, lads. And there he sent word for his son to come and get him. When his son arrived a few days later, John
he was fucked.
He probably looked at you. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell if he had a stroke or not. He was fucking so hammered. But by that stage, John, when his son arrived, he'd recovered some of his speech. But he was still convinced he was under attack. He told his son that he felt as if he was being stabbed by knives and pins over and over again. In his mind, the cause, sheesh, it's obvious. A witch had fucking cursed him.
Of course.
Meanwhile, Alison, horrified by what she believed to be her own very real powers, she was riddled with guilt. Her intent was just to frighten him, to scare him. She did not want to actually fucking almost kill him, but she was convinced she had done exactly that. So, in an effort to ease her own conscience, she went to the inn where John was recovering and, on her knees, she begged him to forgive her. And unbelievably, he forgave her.
Perfect him.
His son, however, not so much. Within 24 hours, John's son reported the matter to the local justice of the peace, Roger Noel. Noel took statements, he examined accused witch Alison, and under questioning, she confessed. And with the arrest and confession of Alison Device, a chain of events was set in motion that would ultimately lead to 10 executions. After extracting a confession from a guilt-ridden young girl, Roger Noel moved on to his next line of questioning. How did you become a witch? Alison explained that about 2 years earlier, her grandmother, the famous old woman, Old Demdike, she was called, what a name.
Right.
Alison said Old Demdike had repeatedly encouraged her while they were out walking and begging together to allow a devil or familiar spirit to appear to her. her grandmother told her that she should let this spirit suck blood from part of her body, and that in return she would be able to have and do what she wished. Now, this part of the story is always like kind of interesting because it's like she's accused of being a witch, of being in the devil, and she's in league with the devil because the devil will give her anything she wants. They're still known as like a dirt poor family. Right. So the devil is not fucking very helpful, at all. He's not giving them shit. However, not long after these persuasions, as she was walking through a field, a creature appeared to her in the form of a black dog. The dog spoke to her and asked for her soul, promising that in return, he would give her the power to do anything she desired. Tempted, she sat down, and the black dog sucked at her breast, just below the nipple.
That's what he wanted.
Exactly, he was a happy dog. The place where this happened remained bruised and blue for the next 6 months. She said she never saw the black dog again until March 18th, when, after her argument with the peddler, it appeared to her once more and offered to lame John Law.
And then he just gave him a stroke.
Yeah.
Now, a quick side note. So we've talked about familiars before on other witch episodes that we've done. But for anyone new here, a familiar in witchcraft lore is basically a demon assistant. So trial records claimed witches they were given a supernatural helper by the devil, usually disguised as a normal animal like a cat, dog, toad, or bird. Totally normal pet behavior. Completely fine. Nothing suspicious. Now, the familiar's job was to do the witch's dirty work, spreading illness, cursing neighbours, killing livestock, all that sort of good witchy stuff. In return, the witch was said to feed it with her own blood through a so-called witch's mark, which during searches of witches could literally be anything. It could be like a birthmark, a mole, a scar, even a bit of psoriasis. That would do the job. In reality, most familiars were just ordinary animals dragged into mass hysteria. But on paper, your cat was no longer a cat. It was Satan's employee on a part-time contract.
Very nice. So after Roger Noel had his confession from Alison, he now had another line of inquiry to follow. Her grandmother, Demdike. And with a bit of digging, he discovered that there were other cunning families in Pendle practicing what he believed to be the dark arts of magic.
It's such an interesting story because these people, like, they were coming from cunning families. They genuinely believed they had powers, supernatural powers. So when they brought in, like, there was no torturing done that we know of to get the witches to confess that they were actually witches. With Alison, they went in, he was like, "Are you a witch?" She was like, "Yep."
Yeah, got me.
You got me, I am a witch.
So the two main families at the heart of the Pendle Witch Trials were headed up by two elderly and supposedly powerful witches. First, there was Alison's grandmother, Elizabeth Southerns, better known as Old Demdike. Then, the other family was led by Anne Whittle, also known as Chattocks. These two matriarchs were said to have a long-standing rivalry. So let's start with Old Demdike first. She was elderly, blind, and believed to be around 80 years old, which may as well be like 100 and something years old back in the early 1600s. She lived in the forest of Pendle at a place called Malkin Tower, close to the home of her widowed daughter, Elizabeth Device, and her grandchildren, Alison Device, the tattletale, James, and then the youngest, Jeanette.
Now, the exact location of Malkin Tower, it's still debated today because it was demolished shortly after the witch trials, but contemporary records place it somewhere in the old forest of Pendle, near the hill itself. Funny enough now, despite the name Malkin Tower, it was not a tower at all. It was a cottage, and the name Malkin, it translates roughly from Old English as rubbish or filth. So, Demdike, she was the powerful witch of Shit Tower.
Damn, and it's like being in the league, the devil can give you whatever you want. And I will ask for literally nothing, even though you've sold your soul.
Give me riches, I can give you Shit Tower. That's what
that's what you really want, yeah. So that's actually pretty appropriate because Demdike and her family, they, as we said, they lived in extreme poverty. Like, their main income was begging. Demdike, now she was known as a cunning woman. The cunning, or wise folk, were practitioners of what was considered beneficial magic. They used herbal medicine and folk charms to heal the sick, undo curses, find stolen property, tell fortunes, induce love, and counteract malevolent magic. This knowledge was then passed down through the family, generation after generation. These were so-called good witches of the community. You know, the people you went to when your cow stopped giving milk, your child fell ill, or maybe you thought someone had cursed you. But not everybody saw it that way. Many, especially those who didn't like the idea of a bit of competition with the church, made no distinction at all between a cunning woman, aka good witch, and a witch in league with the devil. In their eyes, magic was magic, and it all came from the very same evil place, the depths of hell. Now, there are quite a few stories about Demdike's supposedly evil magic floating around. For example, there was one tale that she'd been asked to try and heal a sick cow. However, the very next morning after she visited it, the cow dropped dead. And this was all the proof some people needed that she had killed it.
Like, she's not a vet. She just showed up, met the cow, and then the cow died because it was already sick.
It was already sick.
Yeah, you cursed the cow,
Yeah, exactly.
Bitch. Now, there were even darker stories. On one occasion, Demdike was seen having a heated argument with a man in the forest of Pendle after he refused her access to his land. The next morning, the man's child fell ill. Now, the child lingered for about a year before eventually dying. And in the eyes of the locals, the connection was pretty obvious.
I love that. It's like, he died a year later, so I'll kill his child very slowly and over the course of a year. Mwah. Now, it's very likely that Demdike and her family, they heard the rumors. They were good witches, but they heard the rumors that they were evil witches. And they were happy to let people believe the rumors that they were in league with the devil. After all, when your main source of income is begging, that kind of reputation suddenly becomes pretty handy to have. Who would be brave enough to tell a dark witch to jog on without throwing her a few coins? I guess they thought it would make them a little bit more intimidating, so if they ask you for a couple of coins, you're probably gonna give it to them.
Yeah, right.
But that reputation was now coming back to bite them in the ass when Roger Noel brought Demdike in for questioning, based on what Alison had been telling him. During the interrogation, Demdike was all too happy to shift a bit of the heat off herself by throwing a rival cunning woman straight under the bus. And that rival was Anne Whittle, aka Chattox. Chattox, like Demdike, was the matriarch of her own cunning family in the area, where the craft was passed down from mother to child. Chattox passed hers to her daughter, Anne Redfarne, and then in turn to her granddaughter, Marie. Now, Chattox, like Demdike, said to be around 80 years of age. She later claimed that she had been introduced into witchcraft by Demdike herself, though that was most likely a convenient way to shove the blame for her own activities onto the woman she already hated. In the trial records, Chattox was described as a very old, withered, spent, and decrepit creature, her sight almost gone. Chattox was known to mutter constantly to herself, though no one could ever make out what she was saying, which probably just made her seem even more devilish. She's communing with the devil.
Right.
The relationship between these two families was bitter and long-running, driven largely by competition for money and survival, not just in begging, but also in magic and influence. Hey, Pendle Valley, only room enough for one witch. Now, the main source of their rivalry appears to date back to around 1601, when Alison and her mother, Elizabeth Device, had linen and oatmeal worth more than 20 shillings stolen from their home by Chattox's daughter, Anne. Under questioning, Demdike and her granddaughter, Alison, accused Chattox and her daughter, Anne, of using witchcraft to sicken children, destroy livestock, and even commit multiple murders. The accusations usually followed the same pattern. The witch had an argument with someone who would later turn up sick or even dead. Now, the events themselves were likely just a coincidence. After all, these were not the healthiest of people. In 1600s, life was pretty short and unpleasant.
Except for Demdike and Chattox.
I know, 80 years old, these two rival witches.
Maybe that was the bargain with the devil.
Yeah. For Roger Noel, this was a clear-cut case of witchcraft. He hadn't just found one witch, he'd found two whole families. Chattox and her daughter Anne, they were hauled in, questioned, and later sent to Lancaster Castle to await trial for witchcraft, alongside Demdike and Alison.
So in the space of just a few days, Elizabeth Device watched the law close in. Her daughter Alison and mother Demdike had been arrested and thrown into Lancaster jail, along with rival witches Chattox and Anne Redfern. Now, Elizabeth must have been absolutely beside herself with fear.
She must have thought, they're probably coming for her next.
Right? Like, her entire family was now in the hands of the law. And in 1612, once you were accused of witchcraft, the odds were not exactly in your favour. So, Elizabeth Device did what any desperate woman in her position might do. She gathered together her friends, neighbours and relatives at her home in Malkin Tower to figure out what on earth they were going to do next. So this meeting took place on the 10th of April 1612, which was a Good Friday.
Holy day.
A holy day indeed. Now, from a modern point of view, this just looks like a group of poor, frightened people meeting to talk about survival.
Sure.
You know, like who could bring food into the prison, who might speak on their behalf, how could they possibly stop the rest of the family being dragged away into jail? But when word of this meeting reached Roger Noel, it looked like something else entirely.
What are they up to?
So what he believed was going on, well, it wasn't a support meeting. He believed it was a full-blown witches' Sabbath. This was, in his mind, a great assembly of witches and wizards from all over, getting up to all sorts during these Sabbaths. During these gatherings, witches, they would make paste from the limbs of unbaptized children. Following the demon's instructions, they then smeared the paste on a seat or a piece of wood. When this had been done, quote, they were immediately carried into the air, whether by day or night and visible, or if they wished, invisibly, end quote.
That's that scene in The Witch, after they steal the baby in the movie The Witch.
Mashing the baby
mashes
up,
the baby up, puts the
mortar.
thingy on, and then you see the witch fly up.
That's what they're doing, yeah. So in some cases, rather than using ointments, the witch was transported by demons in the form of animals, at other times merely by the demon's invisible powers. Now the main man himself, the devil, he would be there at these Sabbaths also, teaching the witches, how to make the ointments from the bowels and other parts of unbaptized children to fulfill all of their desires. Now, the bargain with the devil was ratified by a verbal oath or in writing, sealed with wax and often signed in blood, or also sometimes by kissing the devil's arsehole.
I love a face like that. Yeah, you want to be in league with me? Rim job.
Just bends over. Yeah. Now, with these Sabbaths, there was also dancing and I assume some sort of sandwich platter. It was quite the shindig.
It sounds awesome, honestly.
Right? I'd love to go. So, maybe feeling a bit left out after not getting an invitation to kiss the devil's arse at Shit Tower, Roger Noel, he arrested many of those who were at Malkin Tower. 8 people in total. Among them was Elizabeth Device, her son James, and her 9-year-old daughter Janet. All were brought in for questioning, which, according to Noel, would finally uncover this sinister plot they were apparently plotting.
Yeah, he was just mad to arrest people. He couldn't get enough people. It's like, I'm going to arrest you, and you, and you, and you. Yeah. Wow, what a guy. During the interrogations, the information provided by the 2 youngest, James and Janet Device, would prove to be the most fatal for the accused. Now, through a series of leading questions and a little bit of coercion, don't mind if I do, Roger Noel managed to get exactly what he needed from these 2 terrified children. Janet confirmed who was present on the night of that Sabbath meeting and described what sort of witchcraft was supposedly taking place. Now remember, this was just a group of friends trying to decide how they could help out some people who had been sent to jail.
Yeah.
But no, now they were partying with the devil, kissing his ass, and doing all sorts. Having a fucking awesome time. But Noel, he wasn't just looking for witchy gossip. He wanted evidence of an actual crime. And that came from James. Now, James told Noel that the group had planned an old-fashioned witch heist, blowing up Lancaster Castle, killing the jailer, and freeing their grandmother Demdike and his sister Alison. Interestingly, nobody seemed to pause and ask themselves how on earth a group of dirt-poor beggars who, again, lived in Shit Tower, how they're supposed to obtain and transport enough gunpowder to blow up a castle. It's a big castle, it's a fortress. I mean, it's not like they could magic it out of thin air.
Yeah.
Or I suppose they could.
Oh,
if they were witches. Hey. But regardless, this story, which was totally true, wink wink, not coerced at all, double wink. You got witches, you got gunpowder plots. This was, oh my god, if you're gonna make a career, like maybe Roger Noel wanted to make a career, this was gold. This was exactly what he wanted. Probably because he fed that to the literal witnesses. Right, he was like, this is gonna do a great job for my career. See, Roger Noel knew that the 2 greatest imagined threats to King James's kingdom were rogue Catholics and witches. And suddenly here he has a gunpowder plot with explosives and the devil. He got all this sounds like a movie.
Right.
This is great.
King James, it's happening again.
Yeah. For fuck's sake, you have to go write another book. This is almost as if Roger Noel had forced a confession from a couple of innocent children to gain favor with the king. In fact, that's probably exactly what happened here.
Oh, 100%. But James wasn't done. So he then told Noel about a murder plot, supposedly discussed at the Sabbath.
It gets even better.
So a witch from Gisborne in Yorkshire named Janet Preston had allegedly shown up at Malkin Tower to ask the others for help killing Thomas Lister, a wealthy landowner. Now, this was a bold move for Janet Preston, considering that just 4 days earlier, she had actually been acquitted in York on charges of killing a child by witchcraft. She was acquitted due to lack of evidence. But her desire for revenge against Thomas Lister, it was simple enough. He was the one who brought the charge against her. Now, some people believed Thomas only accused Preston in the first place because he thought that she had bewitched his father, who died in 1607. Apparently on his deathbed, the old man called out Janet Preston's name, and Thomas decided that meant that she had killed him. What's more likely, if the rumours are to be believed, is that Preston and Thomas's father were having an affair, and the old man was calling out his mistress. Whoops, not his murderer.
I just want to see those tits one more time before I die.
Goddamn hot witches.
Yeah.
In 1607, though, there wasn't enough evidence to charge Preston with anything. So perhaps Thomas hoped that he'd get his revenge by accusing her of killing a child, but she managed to slip through that trial too. But with these new accusations that Preston was at a witch's sabbath plotting to kill him, Thomas suddenly remembered some helpful evidence. He claimed that Preston, when she came to pay her respects to his father after he died, the corpse began to bleed in her presence. Now, the belief that a corpse would bleed in the presence of its murderer, this was common in early modern England. It was thought that the dead body itself would accuse the killer. I'm not sure how all that slipped his mind in 1607 when his father died, but feck it, he remembered just in time for her 1612 trial. So after James Device confessed to plotting against Thomas Lister, Janet Preston was taken to York Castle instead of Lancaster. And, would you believe it, by sheer coincidence, I'm sure, the prosecutor's daughter was actually married to none other than Thomas Lister. This time, Preston wasn't so lucky. She was found guilty. It almost feels like Thomas Lister was on some sort of personal witch hunt for Janet Preston, but that couldn't be.
No way. No way. So it's like they're just rounding up sort of anybody who kind of pissed them off now at this stage. It's like...
Pretty much it. He was after her for years.
Yeah, it's like finally, okay. Yeah. It's like, okay, we got all these witches who are at a witch's sabbath and there's two families of witches. Yeah. While we're at it, can we think of anybody else, you know? Okay, you know? So now all together, folks, we have 12 accused witches. Old Demdike, her daughter, Elizabeth Device, her grandchildren, James and Alison, then you've got Chaddocks, her daughter, Anne Redfern, and then 6 other friends and neighbours who had attended the so-called Witches' Sabbath on Good Friday, and then also Jeanette Preston. Old Demdike, by the way, she never made it to trial. The key being they're old. She was 80 in the early 1600s. Yeah. Fair play to her for making it even that long. She died in the underground dungeon while awaiting her trial, which, honestly, not surprising.
No.
Within the dungeons of the castle, prisoners were kept in a stone hole roughly 20 feet by 8 feet. It was dark, it was wet, it was overcrowded, it was filthy with rats. There was almost no light, no sanitation, very little water, and barely any separation between the prisoners. It was grim, even by the standards of the day. And so it's not quite, shocking that an 80-year-old woman didn't make it through all that.
Right, yeah.
I mean, didn't make it through all that to probably be killed anyway.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from someone who had previously been imprisoned in Lancaster Castle. Quote, "And many times when I went to stop out the rain in the cold winter season, my shirt was as wet as muck with the rain that came in upon me while I was labouring to stop it out. And the place, being high and open to the wind, sometimes as fast as I stopped it, the wind blew it out again. In this manner I lay all that long, cold winter till the next trial, in which time I was so starved and so frozen with cold and wet with the rain that my body was greatly swelled and my limbs much benumbed." Man, they should fucking learn English back in the 1600s. I don't even know what he's trying to say, but it's basically cold and wet. So yeah, 5-star accommodation, this was not. On the first day of the trials at Lancaster on August 18th, 1612, chaos broke out in the courtroom. Anne Whittle, aka Chaddocks, pleaded guilty. Most likely she'd been promised some form of mercy if she confessed. It was also expected that Elizabeth Device would do the same. After all, she had already confessed to Roger Nowell during her interrogation. But when Elizabeth Device was brought to the prisoner's bar to begin her trial, she absolutely lost it. She screamed out in what the court records described as an outrageous manner at nearly everybody involved in the trial, and as she reserved her loudest fury for one person in particular, her own daughter, 9-year-old Janet. There was a moment of extraordinary courtroom drama when Janet was ordered to stand and give evidence against her own mother. Elizabeth began cursing her own child so violently that the entire court was taken aback. Janet became so frightened she burst into tears and told the judge she was too afraid to speak in her mother's presence. In the end, the judge had Elizabeth removed from the courtroom entirely. Once she was gone, Janet Device stood up on a table so she could both be seen and heard and gave her evidence to the court. She did so calmly and clearly. Almost like she was learning lines and
Right.
had been coached into what she was about to say.
She's probably like given treats by Roger Noel, like up in his warm office.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Just say this and you get more treats.
Yeah, treats. Here's a grape or something. Whatever is a treat back in the day. Now, normally, a 9-year-old child would never have been allowed to act as a key witness in a capital trial. You can't really believe kids are kids. Come on.
Yeah.
They're liars.
They say the darndest things.
But good old King James in Demonology, my favorite book, he had argued that, listen, folks, when it comes to punishing witches, the usual rules of evidence don't really throw that out the window now. Really, you can bend the evidence as much as you want, so long as you get rid of the witch.
Throw the book out the window. Not my book, though. My book's
Yeah, exactly. Keep my book in the window. Even with Janet giving the court a performance of a lifetime, the judge was still uneasy about how much weight was being placed on Janet's testimony. So he arranged what was, essentially, the early modern version of an identity parade. Janet was removed from the courtroom. The accused witches were lined up together, but between each witch, the jailer placed another prisoner or an unknown woman to try and confuse Janet, to see if she knew who was actually a witch, or was she being fed everything and just lying. Janet was then brought back in and asked a series of questions. Which women had been at Malkin Tower on Good Friday? How did she know them? What were their names? Would she recognize them again? And Janet said, yep. And one by one, she walked along the line, took the accused witches by the hand, and identified them as those present at the witches' Sabbath.
You and you.
Wow, that was easy.
All dead.
The judge even tried to trick her, asking whether a woman named Johanna Style had been there. That name, Johanna Style, made up. He invented it. And Jeanette, she saw through that bullshit. She said she had never heard of such a woman, never heard that name before.
Like, why didn't you use like a normal, like, that's,
Yeah.
it was fakey Mac fake there?
Exactly, yeah.
No.
Let me think of that. No, don't think so. And that was enough to convince the court. All 10 women were found guilty. On the afternoon of Wednesday, August 19th, 1612, 10 women, actually, and a couple of men, sorry. Let the record show, hey, the lads are there too. No male witch erasure here. It was on the afternoon of Wednesday, August 19th, 1612, that the names of those to receive the death sentence were read aloud. Anne Whittle, aka Chattox, Elizabeth Device, James Device, Anne Redfarn, Alice Nutter, Catherine Hewitt, John Bulcock, Jane Bulcock, Alison Device, Isabel Roby, and on Thursday, August 20th, 1612, the witches of Lancashire were taken to Gallows Hill on the windswept moors outside the Lancaster city gates. And there they were all hanged. With all her family now dead thanks to her testimony, it's not entirely clear whatever happened to 9-year-old Jeanette Device immediately after the trial. However, later in life, in a deeply bitter twist of fate, things came back to bite Janet in the ass.
This is such a good part of the story.
From 1633 to 1634, about 20 years after the original trials, another witch panic swept through Lancashire. A boy named Edmund Robinson claimed he'd been led to a witches' meeting, and he began naming some names of the witches he saw. Among those he accused was, allegedly, Jeanette Device. Hey, that's twice. Yeah, that's twice. She's now a grown woman, but that's twice she's been hanging out with witches.
Right.
So, fool me once, shame on you. Janet had become a template. If a child could testify once, a child could testify again. This time, however, something had shifted. The Privy Council in London got involved. King Charles I ordered proper medical examinations and was far more cautious in his questioning. The investigators, quite frankly, smelled bullshit. Goddamn, they're not doing the witch stuff anymore.
I
They're
know,
like,
right? Yeah.
They're like, okay, witch stuff is not real.
Yeah.
Several of the so-called confessions were retracted, and Edmund Robinson eventually admitted he made parts of the story up. He actually had been inspired by the stories he had heard from the original Pendle Witch Trials about Malkin Tower. Ultimately, Janet and the other accused were all acquitted of witchcraft. However, I'm sure the irony of being locked up as a witch in the very same place her family had been held and where their journey had ended 20 years earlier was not lost on Janet Device at all.
It's really interesting because like this is definitely a time within England and Europe as well when like these witch hunts and witch trials and hangings they were dying down, but like Salem was just getting started.
Yeah, right. Actually, yes. So this was in what? So the second trial was 1634.
Yeah.
Salem wasn't for another almost 60 years.
Yeah, right?
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I remember I was reading, God, we need to stop bringing up Salem. But like, people in England were like shocked about Salem. They're like, how are you still doing that?
You're still doing that?
Yeah, exactly. We grew out of
yeah.
witch shit. Like, it was like, if that had happened in England, it wouldn't have happened in England.
They wouldn't fly, yeah.
Yeah, they were like, no, you guys can't be doing this shit. But hey, I guess...
You guys are so behind. That's so 1630s.
Yeah. All right, folks, that is the story of the Pendle Witch Trials. Yay, it was a good one. I enjoyed that one, actually. It was
Love a
fun.
good witch episode.
You can't beat a good witch. And, you know, we got to do more witches.
Yeah.
We were just discussing there, we want to cover...
Bamberg.
where, well, like 1,000 witches were burnt at the stake.
There was a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
a metric
on.
shit ton. We'll dive into that in a future episode. So, folks, look forward to that one. Pencil it in your little calendar in 2026. And we'll see you then. Talk to you soon, folks, in the next episode.
And I'll see you.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening. I love ya. Bye. The dog spoke to her and asked, Raggy?
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.